I'll just give a small brief. Yes, I'll just give a small brief recap from last session.
Yeah.
So the books on coaching. Last session we had discussed about the book The Heart of Laser Focused Coaching. So just wanted to check if anyone went back and read that book, and if yes, so please come on and just discuss like what was your insight or what was the knowledge that you gained. The floor is open to you.
Deepika, sorry, I was not there last session. Could you
Oh.
please ping the name of the book so that I can refer
Sure.
it?
Yes. Anyone else who was there from the last session? Please do come on camera. Let us hear what was your ideologies or anything that you want to share. Okay. That's it, Venkat. That's it from my side. So you can just take it over.
All right. So welcome to the second edition, all of you. So I'd like to start off by asking you, what have you been reading recently? Each one you can share. Yes. Hello, can you all hear me?
We can. Venkat.
I'm wondering why there is no response from anybody. Everybody's silent. Speak up, guys. Don't type in the chat box. I don't look at the chat messages. So please speak up. Open your mics and speak.
Venkat Swapnil here. This is my first session to attend, so the book which I am reading may not be relevant, but as you asked question, I'm reading Earn Life, which talk about the coaching, stakeholder coaching by Marshall Goldsmith.
Okay, very nice. Okay. Who else?
Yeah, Venkat Tindani here. So laser focus coaching book I have not read, but I have read about what is laser focus coaching and all. What I understood is how crisp the questions or the conversation can be. Especially here when I say conversation, the questions, how crisp they can be, and also it need not I mean, how to say, need not be round the bush. Like I just say in a very short sentence, but the other person, he just it's a thought provoking. It's like I need not have a lengthy sentence to say whatever has to be said. I know now whatever I'm speaking is not a laser focused question. So this, if I can tell in a short way, that is what is laser focused is.
Oh, okay. Anybody else wants to share what
So
laser
Venkat
focus
Uday here.
Yeah, Ujjwal.
As I said, I just started reading Inner Game of Tennis book
Okay.
by Tim
Timothy
Galway.
Galway. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a wonderful book. I thought in terms of, our two minds, self one, self two, how we keep fighting with each other, and that obviously impacts our performance, right?
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah. Previously, we used to have this book as one of the books for presentation, in the classroom sessions.
I know we had done it,
brought in-
self one, self two, because I was
Yeah.
from the second batch and it was
I
in
see.
person then.
Okay.
Self one, self two, that we always, there's a critic, inner critic, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's a wonderful book, though. Yeah. There are many books he wrote like that, like The Inner Game of Golf, The Inner Game of Work, a few books in that series, actually, all talking about the same concept, really. But how you apply to that specific game or work or whatever. Yeah. But yeah. But yes, what else? Anybody else?
So hi Venkat, this is Srijata. I'm calling from Singapore. Sorry, I'm actually traveling back home, so I'm not on video. But recalling with what Uday just mentioned, I've just began my coaching journey with CTT, and so we are also doing the inner game of work as a part of our presentation, as a part of our session. So that's one thing. That's one book that I've started reading. And I could totally relate with self one and self two, and how the concept of focus and awareness increasing it impacts in terms of having more clarity. And also another book which I'm just about to begin is The Coaching Habit. It's How to Speak Less and Listen More. So that's a book that I'm looking forward to begin. So these are the two books which are in my pipeline.
Okay, fantastic. Indrani, by the way, this laser focused coaching is not about making your sentences short or your questions short. It's rather asking questions in such a way that you go to the nub of the matter very, very soon, you know. So which means that you listen very intently to what the client is saying.
Mentor and what should
Pick up
kind of exposures based on.
Sorry, somebody saying something. Pick up something that the client has said, and based on that, you ask such an incisive question that the awareness is evoked faster for the client. Yeah, that is laser focused coaching. It's not that your sentences are shorter, right? Yes, any coaching is to evoke awareness of the client, that's for sure. And in all coaching sessions, your sentences must be short, really. Yeah, in fact, to the best questions are the shortest questions, right? But laser focused coaching, the purpose is you may even have a 45-minute conversation or a 1 hour conversation. That doesn't matter. But the point is, the client starts getting awareness sooner in the conversation than later. That is the purpose of laser focused coaching. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Any books? Any thoughts? Guys, I'm seeing all black screen here. If you can, please switch on your cameras, whoever you can. Switch on your cameras, please. Okay. So what would you like to discuss today? Who would like to talk about any book? Anybody can share? Want to share? About some book you're reading in a little more detail. Yeah? Or do you want me to talk? I'm wondering if you guys can hear me. I'm hearing absolutely no response. There's total silence here. Are you able to hear me, everybody?
We can hear you.
Can.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. So I thought I will share some of my something about the book that I read sometime back, maybe about a year back almost. And this book is called The Human Behind the Coach. Okay. This book is written by Claire Pedrick and Lucia Baldelli. Claire Pedrick is a Britisher, and Lucia Baldelli is an Italian. Okay. Both of them are MCC coaches actually. And all of you must have heard in your coach training that coaching is more about being rather than doing, right? So this question is about how to be a coach, how to bring in that humanity in your coaching conversations with the client. So your humanity actually shows up in the flow of the conversation and the conversation connection you make together in the conversation. So sometimes what happens is when we feel a bit overwhelmed about, especially beginner coaches, right? When you start learning, you feel a bit overwhelmed about getting it right. You want to get an outcome for the client, and you make an effort to listen closely to whatever the client is saying. So in the process, when we get overwhelmed like this, our humanity can disappear in the process, And when we show our human side in the coaching conversation, we allow our clients to show their human side also, right? Now, the book is split into two parts, really, yeah? One part, the first part, the authors talk about the humanity within, which means how do I, as a coach, demonstrate that humanity within me? And how does that humanity manifest? That's humanity within. And the second part talks about the humanity between the coach and the client. Yeah. How is that demonstrated between the coach and the client? So there are a few aspects of the humanity within. Okay. And these, what the authors talk about are, there are 4 or 5 things that control the humanity within, which is basically the silence, not knowing. Yeah. The third is humility. The fourth is vulnerability. Fifth is something called distance. How do you maintain distance between you and the client? There are various aspects on which you have to maintain a distance. And the last is about having the courage. Yeah. That's how you, each of these aspects, you should display your humanity. That's the humanity within. So what I'm going to do is to talk a little bit about, share a little bit about each of these aspects, So I have the book here with me. So I'm just going to refer to the book occasionally to hear some, look at some highlighted portions that I had found. First is about the silence aspect, okay? Now, silence, we all have heard about silence in coaching, right? We have heard that silence does wonders to evoke awareness for the client when you hold the silence, when you hold the space for the client. But what is this silence really? Yeah? Silence does not mean not talking. It's not that you keep silent. Okay? Silence also means that you're silent within yourself. You're silent here. There is nothing going on in your head as the client is speaking. Sometimes what happens is as the client is speaking, we try to make meaning of what the client is saying, right? That means some processing is going on inside our heads. That means we are not silent. Silent means there's absolutely nothing going on within ourselves. Yeah? We all know about competency number 6, right? Active listens actively. Now, the active part of active listening is all about silence. Turning down the noise of our own ego, our own thoughts, our own knowledge, our own opinions, biases, judgments, and turning up about our curiosity, about what is happening with the person in front of us. So what I'm trying to say is we cannot be present and listen until we can hold the silence within ourselves. Yeah. So one of the things that I tell my cohort members is, as soon as the client stops talking, we jump to ask the next question, right? So don't rush to ask the next question immediately after the client stops talking. Wait for a while. And a good practice would be to count up to 5 in your mind before you ask your next question or before you start speaking. Because in that space, the client might get an insight. And when you jump to ask the next question or make a statement or an observation immediately after the client stops speaking, you might rob the client of that insight or that awareness that might happen. And the client goes off on a different track altogether. Sometimes what happens is you can actually end the silence by maybe moving or shifting in your chair or taking a deep breath, as you prepare to speak. See, clients will tell you, okay, with their eyes, with their bodies, with body language, or even with their words. Yeah. If you're not comfortable with long silences, some people are not very uncomfortable with silence, right? If you're not comfortable with silence, it means that it may be a sign that you have some work to do. As a coach, you must get comfortable with long silences. Okay? So that's about silence. A little bit about not knowing, okay? Good coaching or maybe masterful coaching or artful coaching is all about being okay with not knowing. We have a competency in the maintains present, right? Which says that the coach is comfortable working in a space of not knowing, correct? Now, what is this not knowing? A not knowing mindset means that you won't have a plan B for running a session when you discover that you don't know what to do. Sometimes you might get stuck in a conversation, right? Maybe the client is going around in circles. Maybe you are stuck. You don't know what is the next question to ask, right? So not knowing mindset is you don't have a plan B to resort to when such a thing happens. See, unless we can tolerate the discomfort of not being in control, it'll be very hard for us to work with someone who is feeling out of control. The clients may be feeling out of control totally. So if you yourself have an urge to control, it'll be very difficult then. So you have to tolerate the discomfort of not being in control, letting go, right? And the more we become comfortable with our own vulnerability, the more we can tolerate not knowing. Many coaches, they learn step-by-step models, that guide them to success. Like there are many models around also. Nothing wrong in knowing about those models. Like there is something called a GROW model, there is something called a CLEAR model, AOR, OSCAR, and so on. Now, the need for a structure comes from a desire to control. Like, for example, having a list of powerful questions, 100 questions to ask in a coaching conversation, 400 powerful questions to ask in a coaching conversation. learning more tools or techniques, the need to add, all show a need to add order to something we cannot control really. You cannot really control a coaching conversation, right? It's the agenda of the client. You don't know what the client is going to bring up. So let's let go. The French author, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, he said that in anything at all, perfection is attained not when there is anything more to add, but when there is no longer anything to take away. So the journey to becoming a great coach is about taking away words, tools, techniques, and doing less and less. That's why I said, Indrani, that it's not about asking, long sentences, it's about asking a question very crisply with fewer words. So you don't need to introduce your question. You don't need to explain your questions. You don't do a preface to your questions. Just ask the question. Yeah. Because when you try to exercise too much control, the conversation loses its flow, and starts to follow your plan, your agenda, rather than the client's exploration. The third thing about this humanity within is humility. Now, some of you may have read this book called, or many of you may have read the book called The Humble Inquiry, right? Now, the Humble Inquiry is all about humility. That's at the core of Humble Inquiry. Humility actually impacts how people experience us as coaches when we interact with them, and how we connect emotionally and build relationship with our clients. Yeah. Now, humility does not mean thinking about yourself less. It's about thinking less about yourself. See the difference? Humility does not mean thinking about yourself less. It's about thinking less about yourself. Again, masterful coaching is not about how great you are or how articulate you are. It's not about your worth or wisdom. It's about what happens in the other person as the result of the dialogue, as a result of the conversation. Yeah. So your goal changes from making sure that you're doing a good job to empowering the client to discover an insight. We saw in the coaching mindset, right, that it's the client's work to do. It's not your job to get an outcome for the client or an insight for the client. It's their work. So not needing to win means that you're no longer attached to an outcome, right? The third aspect is about vulnerability. And vulnerability is having the courage to show up and be seen as who we are when we have no control over the outcome, right? Now, it takes courage to say, I don't know. See, sometimes this knowledge that we all have from our maybe corporate experience or from our whatever, education or whatever, that can be a very powerful force, and that can feed into your ego as a coach that we know better than the other person, right? We are Brené Brown, she said that we are vulnerable every time we move out of what is comfortable to us. We are vulnerable every time we move out of what is comfortable to us. Yeah. And the more we become comfortable with our vulnerability, the more we can tolerate not knowing. Yeah. So what you bring into the coaching session has a lot to do with with how you see and value yourself as a human being. Because who you are is how you will coach. Yeah. So how do you demonstrate vulnerability? Yeah? You say, what do we need to do now? Something like that. Or I don't know. Or something like, I feel stuck here. How do you suggest we move on? Or you may try something new that feels uncomfortable, like challenging the client, for example. Or you may share what you are experiencing in the coaching conversation. Like, for example, saying in the conversation, I'm feeling a sense of discomfort when I hear you say that. What are you feeling? Yeah. Share what you're experiencing. You're allowed to share that, right? And then asking the client also for their view. Invite the client to use a metaphor. What does that feel like? That is about vulnerability. Okay. And about distance, there are a few things they talk about this aspect of distance. They talk about distance from what basically? What is the distance from? See, when we are too close, we can get lost and become over curious sometimes about the details, the facts, that interest us, that are of relevance, we think is of relevance to the client. When this is about our curiosity in the session, our curiosity as a coach, the client does not discover anything new. And remember one thing, the curiosity of a coach is to arouse curiosity in the client about their own situation. Your curiosity should engender curiosity in the client's mind about their own situation. Yeah, with your curiosity, they should feel more curious about themselves, right? So when it's about your curiosity, the client does not discover anything new, and then we are asking questions about our own interests and lose the connection with the overall picture of what the client is telling you or what's happening for them. So you have to maintain a distance from your own emotions as a coach. Sometimes we may have emotional reactions to what we are seeing, hearing, or sensing in the room with the client. But between the stimulus and the response, there is space, and in that space, we have to choose our response, right? You have the option to choose your response. If we choose to create a pause in that space, we will be able to keep a distance from our own emotions. Yeah. And you can use this pause to be intentional about how you want to use what is emerging for you. The second thing is you have to have a distance from the client's emotions. One is from your own emotions. Second is from the client's emotions. Because the way we respond to the client's emotions is crucial to create that connection. Yeah. And we can't be too close either to the client's emotion, because when we over empathize or care too much, the client can feel swamped. Too much empathy means getting stuck in their distress. And that's not going to help the client move forward. It's like the client is sitting in a well, asking for help to come out. And instead of lending a hand to pull the client out of the well, you're coming and sitting in the well with the client. Yeah. Then there'll be two clients in the conversation, no coach. The third is you have to maintain a distance from the story of the client. See, when we're listening too closely or too intently to the story, we'll be lost in the details. And we'll be tempted sometimes to investigate further, to go into what is called the root cause analysis. When we are too distant from the story, we may not be very responsive to what the client is saying and appear disinterested also. So an adequate distance, and how much distance is something you need to judge at that time, depending on who the client is, what the client is sharing, and so on. Yeah. And also, one important thing is the distance from the client's values. Yeah. You as a coach may have values different from the client's values, which is natural, right? And in the course of the conversation, you might discover what their values are. For example, you may notice that a client is cheating on their husband or their wife, for example. This may be against your values, and it may catch you off guard, sometimes in the coaching conversation. Now, how you respond in that instant, will impact the trust and the rapport with the client. And sometimes you may have to withdraw from the work because the distance between your values and their values is too big for both of you. So you have to be very careful about this also. Maintain an adequate distance between your values and their values, right? The last piece is the courage, that the authors talk about. And as far as courage is concerned, see, we get to a point in every conversation when sometimes we feel like walking on a tightrope, and that rope is very wobbly, unsafe, and scary sometimes. We don't know what to do. What if we mess up? The art is to manage our fear and stay grounded in our presence. Okay, they will work it out. The clients will work it out. Only if we hold the challenge will the real transformation happen. And I always tell this: the client will always the best resource for you. It takes courage to say, I'm noticing we seem stuck. What is the work we really need to be doing here? We seem to be going around in circles. What do you think is the way forward? Your best resource is always the client. Ask the client. They will come up with something. So courage means courage to say what you see, what you observe, courage to offer what you're sensing based on your own intuition or what you're observing, courage to confront sometimes, courage to challenge the client. Yeah. And encourage the client to take a risk by getting the client to look at it from a different perspective, the situation from a different perspective. In fact, competency number 7 encourages, right? Getting the client to look at it from a different perspective. Yeah, from a new one, a different perspective, right? And also another important courage you should have is the courage to charge a fee to the client. Yeah, that's very important. You need to be paid for our work, right? So you know what you're worth. What is the value you bring to the client? Based on you know what your worth is, don't be afraid to ask for a fee, whatever that fee might be. Yeah, and negotiate that if it's not possible for the client or whatever. Insight is another thing. Insight is the depth of their insight. The client's insight that moves the coaching from transactional to transformational, right? And the most useful way to evoke an insight is to notice that it's happening and not simply pass it by. Sometimes I see coaches, doing a coaching session, coaching a client or a peer coach, and they pass by an insight without noticing it. The client suddenly gets an awareness and they simply go on to ask the next question. See, when you notice a client talk about a shift, or when you notice that the client has got an awareness, use that opportunity to make an observation. I see you already have 2 of those steps with you that you wanted. Yeah. I'm seeing an insight there. What else are you getting by way of an insight? Ask that, because the moment you point out that the client is having an awareness, because the client may not be aware that they have an insight. The moment you point that out, the client starts moving forward and thinking further on that. Yeah. What can stop an insight? When you don't see it. Yeah. Because the client also might lose it in the process when you go to the next question. So when you don't see it, or when you interrupt the client's thinking. Yeah. How do you interrupt the client's thinking? Anybody? How do you interrupt the client's thinking? Or when do you interrupt the client's thinking? You know?
People, this is an interactive session. This is not, we are not here to just listen to Venkat, as much as we love listening to him. But please come up with your answers. That's the
Yeah.
whole purpose. Yeah.
So how do
I
we
can
all,
attempt.
sorry, yeah.
I can attempt.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, when we actually say some expression or we say yes, so that might interrupt the client in the process.
Yeah.
And when we do not let them complete their sentence, that
Yes.
also interrupts.
Yeah. So that's a very visible form of interruption, right? Which is you speak over the client. When the client is saying, you start talking over the client. That's straight interruption. Making those sounds or noises like, okay, right, while the client is speaking also is a form of interruption.
Yeah.
My question is, how do you interrupt the client's thinking? Here you're interrupting the client's speech, but how do you interrupt the client's thinking?
So if we ask something which is totally non-related to what client was saying because of our lack of understanding, because of our under intellect, maybe we ask something very irrelevant to the client, and then they get digressed. They get digressed,
But
possibly.
they are still thinking,
With
right?
that and with the focus on gross margin that we are hearing, it is a tough balancing act.
Can you mute
that
the person speaking? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Vinod.
Yeah, so
Vinod, you raised your hand? Yeah.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So one part of interruption, one way is somewhere, I mean, it's the client is in control. If you were to, they're in control of their conversation, it is their conversation. So part of me is actually saying seeking permission is important. So the interruption is also to make them aware, hey, that could be an alternate point of view, or that could be a insight that we could offer as a coach. But I do believe at that moment, it is important to both acknowledge you as a coach are interrupting and possibly seek permission.
Okay. Yes, Sapna?
I think when we stop being present, we can interrupt the client's thinking. That's when we are preoccupied with some questions or our eagerness, somehow the energies shift. And when the presence is not there.
When the presence is not there. Okay. Ayushi?
When we look distracted, like we may just from our facial expression or body language look distracted that they're talking to us, but we're, shifting or are distracted by something in the environment.
Okay. Sandeep?
I think we stop their thinking when we lead the way or lead their thinking in a direction.
Okay.
That's where then they stop their own thought process.
Okay. I'm talking about interrupting, not stopping. Okay. Yeah. Interrupting is kind of stopping. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Fair enough. Indrani? Indrani, you want to say something?
Sorry. It could be a challenge question where the client is thinking in one direction and the question we ask makes him to think something challenge question, like that could be an interruption in the client's thinking. Or sometimes the client believes something to be true or false, whatever it is. And then I ask the opposite one. So that also interrupts. Like, for example, I say, the client says, I believe this. And as a coach, I might say, okay, how true is it for you? Or something like that. So the thinking, it's not the normal way it goes. So.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Ravinder?
Sorry, I can't be on video, but if the client is processing a thought and building on it, and you need to provide the silence for him to finish. And sometimes that silence can be a longer one, and if the client is processing and you feel that there is silence and you jump in with a question, sometimes allowing the silence to pervade the meeting allows him to break through. At least that's what happens with me. Sometimes I need the silence to build it together. So that I would think of would be an interruption in my ability to take that leap. So yeah, one thought,
Yeah, absolutely. That in fact is the right answer. So when the client is saying something and stops after saying something, and immediately you jump to ask the next question without holding the space for them to process their thinking, that is when you interrupt their thinking. That's why I said hold that space of a few moments before you start speaking. Okay, because otherwise you'll be interrupting their thinking actually. Okay, that's a very dangerous thing to do actually. Okay, in a coaching conversation, you'll be depriving them of some insight perhaps. Okay, that's the first part about the humanity within. Now the second part I'll run very quickly through with you. It's about how do you demonstrate the humanity between the two of you. Okay, the human quality that we saw in the humanity within what we saw earlier can be demonstrated or can be seen in the space between us, between the coach and the client, through partnership. Number one, partnership. Number two, the dance between the two of you. Coaching is a kind of a dance. Okay, the words that you use and the music in the whole thing. And lastly, trust. Okay. Now, partnership, we all know from the definition of coaching that coaching is a partnership between the coach and the client. Okay. For any insight to be useful, the insight needs to be generated from within for the client, not given to individuals as conclusions. It's like an egg. If the egg is broken from outside by others, life doesn't survive. But if it's broken from within, life starts. Insights are something like that. And keep forward facing always in a coaching conversation. All right. Which means that you avoid U-turns in the conversation. This might sound like, you're 15 minutes into the conversation and then suddenly you ask a question. When we started, you said that, you said this, A, B, C, D. Yeah. Has anything we have done so far addressed this? With this, what has happened is you've turned around and gone back to the beginning of the conversation. So a good thing to ask at that point will be, what do you know now that you did not know when you started? Never make a U-turn. See, Some coaches try to remember something that the client said in the 6th minute in the conversation in the 20th minute and ask a question about that. That's making a U-turn. Take the client from where the client is and make the client go forward. When I say make, take the client forward, with your questions, right? So, see, technical competence can only get you so far in knowing how to listen and what to ask. Artful coaching is all about human-to-human partnership. Okay. Dancing between, I said coaching is a dance, right? So the flow is broken in the conversation. It's like you dancing, one form of dance and the other dancing another form of dance. The flow is broken when the questions from the coach are disconnected from what the client has just shared. Always ask questions based on what is showing up in front of you, what is unfolding in front of you in that moment. Yeah, that's on the dance of the coach. Only then it will be a beautiful dance. Yeah. About the words, see, the words we hear and speak are a part of every coaching conversation, right? The human qualities that bring us depth, connection, and flow to the conversation includes our tone of voice also, not only the words, content, but the tone of voice, our physiology, the body language, how we move, the silences, and the level of trust between us. Okay. So that's about words. On the music, right? Music, what is this? So it's like this, if every session that you do with different people looks and sounds the same, it's unlikely that you're making the most of creating the work together. See, every client is different. Even if 3 different clients talk about the same issue, it's not that there is a cookie cutter approach to the coaching conversation. Oh, it worked well with that client, I'll let you the same approach. No, you cannot do that. Because each client is different. Their context is different. Yeah. What do you call it? The background is different, maybe. Yeah. So all of this, that's what we call the whole person of the client, right? The person is different. Therefore, you need to be with the client to co-create the work together. Yeah. So that's about the music, and the words also play an important part. Lastly, on the trust. As soon as you start the conversation, the clients will sense whether they can trust you on how they experience your behavior in the conversation. How do you come across personally? People tend to trust you if they believe they are interacting with the real you, the real person who you are. That's about authenticity, right? When they have faith in your judgment and competence, and when they feel that you care about them, that's the empathy. Yeah. So this is about the trust, yeah, and cultivating trust and safety. We know is a very important competency among the coaching competencies. The last thing the authors talk about in the book is about reflective practice, which is again one of the things that we talk about in the coaching mindset. Right now, reflective practice is all about going back and listening to your own conversation, listening to the recordings of your conversations, maybe, yeah, and or if you are in the habit of journaling, writing that journal based on what you think you did well, what went wrong, what you could have done better, and so on. Because reflective practice helps us, helps accept uncertainty, which is the route to effective learning. Yeah, it enables us to say, I don't know what's going on here, and I want to find out. Yeah, some of the questions you can ask is, what did I do well here? What could I have done better? What did I miss? What parts of the client's language did I perhaps miss? Yeah. What are some facial expressions or emotions that I missed here that I could have asked about? That's what you reflect on post every coaching session. So one recommendation I will make to all of you as coaches is to record every coaching conversation that you have with your peers, clients, whatever, with the permission, of course, and listen to that recording after you finish the session. Maybe a day later, not immediately, a day later. That's wonderful learning.
Venkat,
Yes.
can I come in?
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm done. Go ahead. You can talk now.
No, I don't want to talk. I want everybody else to talk, actually. I'm very keen to know what are some of the things that you have read from this book, or if you have read this book, in fact, first of all. So why if you have read, and an N if you haven't, on the chat box, or you can open mic and speak. This is a community thing, so please come on camera, light up the room. Let's have a conversation here. Thank you, Madhumita.
So I'd like to come in.
Yes, Dilma. Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much, Venkat, for sharing all those wonderful insights. I haven't read the book, but I had a question based on something that you were just speaking about, which is about making the U-turn. And my question was that sometimes, like what you said, the question should be based on what's in the moment, what the client is speaking about right now. Let's say if we find something that's conflicting to what something the client said earlier, or we are finding some interconnection with something that the client said at the beginning, and we want to draw their attention to that connection or that conflict. Is that okay, or is it like a good practice to stay with where we are right now?
No, that's okay because you are in the moment, right? And there is also another competency in subcompetency in competency number 3, which says that the coach maintains the time and focus of the discussion. What is the focus of the discussion? The focus of the discussion is the outcome that the client wants to get from that session, correct?
Right.
So the focus should be on that for both you and the client. So if you notice that the client is veering off in another direction, at that time you can ask, how is this related to what you said you wanted at the beginning of a conversation? You're not actually pointing out to some experience the client shared in the beginning of the conversation, or some statement that the client made, which may be unrelated to what the client is sharing now. But this has got a direct bearing on the client, what the outcome the client wanted, right? So you can share at that point in time. And gently you bring the client back into the original outcome. Or if the client says, this has got a relationship to what my original outcome is, then go with the client on that exploration.
So what I'm understanding is that if it is related to what the conversation is about, a random statement should be ignored that happened 15 minutes back, because clients do make statements, right? And they do bring up things in their stories. But if it is related to, I know it is very contextual, it's difficult to like say it in black and white. And that sometimes that happens, and that sometimes that statement could be in our head and we want to take them back to that statement. Maybe that's not a good idea if we've moved on from there. But if there's a connection with what's happening right now and the outcome, then all right, thank you.
Yes, yeah. And you do not know what random statements are, right? Sometimes the clue may lie in those random statements, actually, which is what Marian Franklin in the book, what is that? Laser Focus, Heart of Laser Focus. She said that these are by the way words. She calls them by the way words, which coaches might sometimes tend to ignore, but they might hold the key to the conversation. So suppose the client begins a conversation by saying, I'm feeling hesitant to talk about this, and then goes on to tell you a story or an incident that happened. The first question should not be about the story. Your first question should be, what makes you hesitant to talk about this? Because the client opened with that, right? So ask about that. This is a question about the client, not about the story that the client is telling you. Yeah. So those also might be significant sometimes. Yeah. So be careful with the words also sometimes. Yeah. Give a watchword. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Sandeep.
So Venkat, my question is that in the conversation, when the client has shown interest in two areas of exploration towards the same outcome, and with the client's permission, you pick one of the route. What should be the right cue for you to bring to the client's attention that there was a second route that you wanted to explore as well towards the same outcome? Would it also be considered a U-turn?
Sorry, Vinod, Sandeep, I lost what you said. What did you say?
So
there are two topics.
So the outcome is one, but the client would want to explore it via two routes, say, approach one, approach two. And the client has been speaking about this direction we have been exploring.
Okay.
What is the right cue for the client, for the coach to bring to the client? Okay, somewhere you wanted to also explore this route to the same outcome, or you just leave it.
There is no cue for the coach. Leave it to the client. Leave it to the client, because otherwise, when you prompt it, it will become your agenda, right? Because coaching is not your agenda; it's the client's agenda. Client may have shared something earlier about 2 routes or 3 routes or whatever. But if the client seems to have got an outcome or an insight in route number 1, pathway 1, let the client go on that part. Let the client bring it, say that, oh, let's go explore number 2 also. Or when there is a point in the conversation that, you come to a pause and the client has explored the options in pathway number 1, then you ask the client, Where would you like to go next? What would you like to explore now? That's it. You don't point out, oh, there's pathway number 2 that you said you wanted to explore. Don't alert the client on that. Simply ask the client, what would you like to explore? Yeah.
Okay.
Vinod?
Yeah, I'm just trying to reflect on that silence, vulnerability, insights, 2-3 things as you were describing about the book, and so trying to play back in a couple of coaching conversations that I've been experiencing. When I see situations, for example, when the client is sharing a lot of context, right? I mean, there is historical and context. While they start out with, say, this is what I want to speak, but the context is extremely heavy. As a coach, when I ask the question, what's happening to me? I think I'm aware there is some degree of confusion that is happening to me. There's also an urge to step in to help client find clarity, but the confusion I'm experiencing is the client wanting a period of silence. It is the client wanting an insight discovery. Should I express vulnerability, saying that, hey, this is a little confusing for me at this point. There's too many information that you have shared. So I just wanted to think this, and I mean, I don't know if it's just me, but when there is a lot of information and this is a 30-minute call, for example, how do the question I'm trying to see is, how do I help facilitate a direction in this conversation?
Yeah, so you simply ask the client, out of all that you've shared, what part of that would you like to focus on today?
And the reason we are saying this is that insight, that itself is an insight for the client.
No, it's not an insight. It gets the client to focus because the word you're using is focus. What would you like to focus on today? Focus is directed at something, right? If you look at 100 things, it's not focus, right? Focus is when you look at one particular thing. The moment you say, out of all what you shared so far, what would you like to focus on really? And use the tone of voice also. And many people, when they coach, they speak in a monotone kind of thing. Bring that empathy or that voice on that tonality. Change your tonality of voice when you coach. As if you're talking to your child or your husband or wife or whatever friend. You bring that tonality, right, when you're talking with them in a personal conversation. Bring that kind of a tonality because that will actually enhance the power of the question also. Yeah. And sometimes coaches miss that tonality of voice.
That's very interesting. I think that's something for me to observe.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
In fact, when the client says a lot of things, when the client has got an insight, when the client is sharing something very significant, you pause for some time after the client stops speaking. And then you say, and that can be very powerful. Just that one word, that can get the client to think further on that. And that softness of the voice, that all plays a huge part.
Can I just add in something over here?
Yes.
So, building on what Venkat has already said, most people think that coaching session should be like a serious conversation without any expressions. And throughout the conversation, the coach should sit in a certain way and have it in a certain way. That's not true. We can have those modalities. And I love what Venkat you added about the empathy in your voice or the tone and all of that. So, even over here, we can smile a little bit and have that kind of connection with each other. Is what I also wanted to bring in. I loved the message, by the way, Deepika has put in. So if you want to see you for this session, please turn on your cameras so that you can have fun. Over to you, Venkat.
Yeah. Ayushi, question?
Yeah, it is related to this whole thing that you said about insight happening, right? And I'm also right now reflecting on a couple of peer coaching sessions we've had. And there have been moments when I've noticed, okay, oh, insight is happening. Or me as a client has communicated, oh, insight is happening. I just wanted to know what are some of the things that we can say, because I know that we're not supposed to lead and we're not supposed to say, oh, wonderful, oh, great, or something like that. So, but what are those things that we can say? Like you said, and okay, that's one thing we can use. But what else can we say at such a moment to acknowledge and to make them
Before Venkat gives away all his techniques, Ayushi, just wanted to understand where is your journey currently in terms of coaching?
Oh, we're just in our 4th, 5th week, very early.
So just build on that. Okay, for now, there is something that you discover for yourself. Venkat has his own style. I have my own style. Each of you have your own style. So what would Ayushi, the coach, do in this scenario?
Okay. I'll think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, Sandeep?
Yeah, quick one, following what Vinod just mentioned, right? So when the client has gone through, say, a few minutes of monologue and explored a few things, one of the early on feedbacks that I had on some of my recordings was that you try to summarize what the client has said and then check what you would like to explain. Is that the best way? Because I find for me and what I have read is you don't even summarize. You just ask after the monologue, where would you like to go next? Because the client knows his or her context. You don't have to remind him. But I am really at crossroads wherein I got this feedback that, okay, you summarize a little and then ask this question. So I want to pick your mind, your and Madhuri's mind.
Madhuri, you want to take that question?
All yours, Venkat, all yours.
So it's a choice. Some people summarize, some people don't. I'm not a huge fan of summarizing. I don't like to summarize. In fact, I tell clients, don't waste your time summarizing. I mean, I tell coaches, don't waste your time summarizing because, like you rightly said, the clients know what they have said. So you don't need to repeat it back to them, or even putting it in 2 or 3 words and then asking. Like I always say, you don't have to introduce your question or explain your question. Simply ask the question. That's it. That's enough. That's my view.
Just want to add on there, if you have done the actioning piece really well in terms of, getting the actions out, chances are that the client will speak more about what they are going to do and less about summarizing. I love what Venkat said, that I also don't want the client to summarize what happened from start to end, but what are they going to do after this? What is it that they're taking away? So it's up to the client. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is true. I mean, I completely resonate at the fag end when the actioning is getting discussed. But to the point when Vinod said that the client has gone through a monologue of 5 minutes from the 15 minutes earlier, and then instead of asking him that, okay, you have spoken these 2, 3, 4, 5 things, where would you like to go forward? Instead of repeating those 4 or 5 things, you just ask him, what would you like to explain? As Vinod was, sorry, Venkat was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
thank
Venkat also added that you need not even say anything. You can just gesture probably, or you might just need one word. So
yeah,
very nice.
thanks so much.
Okay, what else?
What's the next book, Venkat? Which is the next book we are doing?
I don't know. Let people suggest.
Yeah.
What would you like to read, guys? You want to read anything book? Those who have not read this book can read the book, The Human Behind the Coach. Okay, you can read that and maybe share your views when you come back next time. You got a long time. You got 3 months to do it. Yeah. So
There's a LinkedIn group. You can share your learnings there. I'm not sure how many of you have joined. Can I see if you have joined that LinkedIn group? You have? Wow. Okay. All right. No action there. So you can put the summary of this book probably, whatever is your takeaway, if that works. Deepika, can we share the LinkedIn group link? So which book? Those who have already read this one, which one would you like to read? Sorry, I thought there are a lot of readers here waiting to read books. I can start my agenda, Venkat. I have some books already on
Go
my.
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll push my agenda. This is the one I have.
What's that? We can't see.
It's a very small one. It's called The Miracles of Mindfulness. I can put the picture. Yeah, I'll remove the background. Anybody has any recommend? Ruma, I saw you go off on camera. Sorry, on mic.
Actually, like you suggested this book, Madhuri, The Miracles of Mindfulness. I think there are other books which are not exactly about coaching, but which can sort of help us with who we are as people, and that helps us to become better coaches, whether it's
Absolutely.
mindfulness of some of those other practices. That's what I was
Absolutely.
trying to say.
Yeah.
So I've been reading Brené Brown, and I think those are some great books as well to work on ourselves. So those could be another. I mean, some of her books like The Gifts of Imperfection or Daring Greatly, those are some of
Yeah,
the
Daring
interesting
Greatly is
books.
really nice. Yeah, I read that one.
Some time back, I had actually found out, and many of them are in my library actually, for each competency, a few books,
Oh, really?
And actually, yeah. So right from not ethics, of course, from the mindset, coaching mindset to the other competencies, I had actually made out a list of some books. And this book, Human Behind the Coach, is one book that we can use for cultivating trust and safety.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, Ruma has a suggestion about Brené Brown. Anybody else has any other suggestion? What else would you like to read? Sapna, Indrani, Sandeep, Vinod, whoever I can see on the camera.
Actually, I'm an audible person, so I listen to my books.
Okay,
And the current book that I'm listening to is Greater Than Sum of Our Parts by Richard Schwartz. And that's really beautiful because it is narrated by himself. So you can feel the presence and the tone and the pacing. Everything is exactly as he intended to write. And it's a fabulous book because there are some meditative experiences which he puts you through, and you actually get to meet those parts of within yourself. It is following internal family systems, and it's quite interesting. So because I don't read, it becomes difficult. So I don't hold the books in hand, but listening to them makes all the difference to me.
Sure. Can you put it in the LinkedIn group? So if like I'm quite intrigued. I'm going to go and see if I can listen to this one.
Good. Thank you. I'll do that.
The book that I'm reading currently is not a coaching book. It's called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life by Wayne Dyer. This book is the author's interpretation of the Tao Te Ching. How many of you know this book called the Tao Te Ching? You've heard, right? Tao Te Ching is actually a work of Lao Tzu, Chinese philosopher. It's actually, there are 81 verses in Tao Te Ching actually. You can read that truncated English translation in one sitting actually, 81 verses, right? Some of them are just 4 or 5 lines long. Some of them are more than 10 or 14 lines long. But you can study that book for a lifetime, okay? That's what it said. So his interpretation on that, and actually there was an article I had written in the ICF Bangalore chapter's newsletter sometime back, maybe last year or year before last, on how some of these verses of the Tao are applicable to coaching, actually. Some of the verses I picked up, and shared how it links to coaching, how it's related to coaching. So if you read that book, you'll find many, what shall I say? You'll find that a lot of that stuff is about listening, maintaining presence, just being vulnerable, being humble. All of that comes across in that, you come across in that book. Yeah? So the power of being, sorry?
What's the title? Change Your Thoughts?
Change your thoughts, change your life.
Thank you. And Sapna, I just wanted to make sure I got it right. Greater in the
Greater than sum of our parts. Yeah, it's along the same lines as what Venkat shared. I just happened to hear Biology of Miracles. So it's a combination of Wayne Dyer and Bruce Lipton's work. So they had a podcast.
I'm actually reading the Biology of Belief also now, along with
Yeah.
this Wayne Dyer's book. Interesting. Okay.
And even that is in their own voice. So again, a good listen. Yeah.
Very nice. So we have 4 or 5 choices here, people. Can you all vote for which one you are going to read and bring the summary for the next session? And even if you don't bring the summary, it's okay. You can talk about it also, or you can post on LinkedIn. That's fine.
Just coming in, Madhuri. So please do share all the recommendations that you have or you want to read next, or any book that you would want to discuss in the next session. So you can just come on the camera, just unmute yourself and, just discuss that this is the book I want to read. So if you're too shy and don't want to come on camera, we do have our LinkedIn groups. So please do come there and post any book that you would want to discuss about.
Thank you, Deepika. So, Venkat, next one, maybe we do a voting on the LinkedIn group, is it? On which
Okay.
book summary? What
Yeah.
do we?
Sure, whatever. I'm fine.
So, I mean, we would also like to read and come prepared, people. So please let us know which book we are coming prepared with. So that would help. Venkat, I know must have read most of the books, but still,
No, not at all. Not at all.
It will take time. All right.
Thank you, everyone, for participating today. And I wish you had switched on the cameras. That will make it more interactive. Maybe next time. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Venkat. Very generous shares and very relevant and apt for what we could work on in terms of coaching. I think it's very valuable. I hope it's equally valuable for all of you, all the listeners and all those behind cameras. Please do make an attempt to come in next time and see you all in the next quarter. Meanwhile, keep interacting on the LinkedIn group. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Much
you. Thank you.
gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We have shared the CCU form certificate in the chat box. Please do fill to get your CCU certificates. We have also shared our LinkedIn group link. So please do come join us. Let's keep the group very interactive. Please do come ahead and post all that you want to read, to discuss, anything you would like.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Supna.
Hi.